It's time for us to go over Zoomer Historian, the worst historian on YouTube. That's right. I'm making a bold accusation that this is the bottom of the barrel. Time for pain. It's not really time for pain, but just real quick. When you imagine what a Zoomer historian would be like, can you list off a few attributes that you might like just come up with on your own? Just a couple. I'm looking for when you hear Zoomer historian. What kind of qualities are you envisioning here? Being in Gen Z, fair. Professor like, painful. Why is it that everyone who puts Zoomer in their name is a conservative? Uneducated, Mr. Beast historian, insufferable. Well, I gotta say, when I first heard of this person, which was earlier today, mind you, I was recommended a video about this YouTube channel, and I was like, that's weird. I didn't watch the video that was recommended to me, but I did go to the YouTube channel, and I was like, oh, is this what I think it is? And the answer is it is absolutely what you think it is, okay? So we got Zoomer historian here. And, complete history of the Spanish Civil War, complete life of Adolf Hitler, 1945, 1944, 1943, 1942, 1941, 1939 to 1940, complete life of Hermann Goring. I was like, oh, okay, well maybe he's just like covering like different historical figures, and then no, it's exactly what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like. Every single video on this channel is dedicated to Nazis. He is absolutely a Nazi. The very first video on his channel was why Germany could not win World War II, and the thumbnail says Churchill's fault. It was Churchill's fault that Hitler didn't win World War II. Yeah. So, we're diving into this, folks, and it's going to be a bit weird here. I did do a pre-watch, and we will watch this video. What books did they burn? The National Socialist book burnings of 1933. The Truth. So we'll watch that one. The Boy That Changed the World, the childhood of Adolf Hitler. My God. No, this guy is absolutely worse than What If Alt Hist, because, like, he's doing active Nazi apologia. Just, like, idolizes Hitler like crazy. So I wanted to go over that video about the book burnings, and I wanted to subject you to another one. Ah, uh, the Lebensraum myth. Let's we'll take a look at that one as well. All right. Well, also, the worrisome thing about this YouTube channel is the fact that it has almost 100,000 subscribers. This channel has almost 100,000. It's like 2,000 away from 100,000. Like, it's crazy how close they are. And yeah, a lot of people are watching these videos, like 20,000 a pop on each of these videos. But occasionally, you'll have a video that pops off and does like 120K, 200K, the complete history of the SS. Yeah, we got some Nazi posting here, for sure. So yeah, this channel just keeps gaining steam, and I figure we need to get ahead of the curve. We need to do a takedown video on this. So let's just take a look. Well, I guess we could also cover, were Germany's pre-war conquests justified? Goddamn. But first, we'll see if we have a stomach for a third one after we finish the first two. So, without further ado, I present to you the worst YouTube historian, Zoomer historian.
The book burnings in Germany in the 1930s are widely mentioned in the media, in school, and in books. Whenever National Socialism is brought up, the book burnings are named as one of the main...
Yeah, I bet you didn't think he'd sound like a tiny Three Arrows. Like a tiny, like a miniaturized, higher-pitched Three Arrows.
evils that were committed during that period. The book burnings have become a byword for state censorship in general. My main question regarding the way this event is presented is simply this. Are book burnings inherently bad? Why is it put on such a pedestal? The official Holocaust Museum's own video on the topic starts off like this.
To burn books is simply a fundamental repression of ideas.
Also, just real quick, want to note, the first place he goes is the National Holocaust Museum's video. Just interesting about that one, eh?
To burn books is simply a fundamental repression of ideas.
I mean, what can a book do, and why is it so dangerous that it needs to be physically annihilated?
If book burning or censorship is so unheard of and egregious, why did we ban 30,000 books in post-war Germany during denazification when the Nazis themselves only banned around 4,000? The event...
Probably because it's fine to ban some books for specific reasons, but not for the reasons the Nazis did it. You know, I'm okay with, like, the Encyclopedia of Child Pornography being banned. I don't think that's a real book, but if it were, I'd be fine with that one being banned.
Itself is constantly mentioned, but it's also always glossed over extremely quickly. Few stop to ask themselves, what books...
Oh, Penny!
Yay, I see another button.
Thank you for gifting a sub to my rear end. I appreciate it.
...did the Nazis actually burn? This fairly simple question is rarely looked into. When asked, the answer is usually just Jewish books, and they didn't like Jews, and then no further comment given. This is not good enough. It's time to actually look into what these books were, and why they were burned, and then banned. This is a very sensitive topic for reasons that I'm sure you can figure out, so I'll present the books and their contents without opinion. Also, my Patreon is down below.
Yeah, you might, having pre-watched this, you might, I'm just gonna tell you straight up, his claim that he's presenting this without opinion is absolutely not true.
Below if you enjoy these videos and wish to help me on my way to being able to make these videos full time. Anything helps. My Telegram is also down below. To discuss the book burnings, a brief summary of the cultural change during the Weimar Republic is needed, as a large part of the rise of the Nazis was a reaction, or you could even say revolution, against these cultural changes. Again, I will not comment if these changes are inherently good.
Like he goes, the Nazis were a reaction against, or should I say a revolution against. I feel like the connotation of reaction versus revolution against, I feel like there's a bit of a difference in the connotation there, especially when you suggest that it was instead a revolution against, usually a revolution being a act against an oppressive regime would be generally where a revolution would be used there, not the reverse. And implying that the Nazis were doing a revolution against woke ideology in the Weimar Republic is, I think, very telling.
good or bad. If you're Christian or vaguely conservative, this period is seen as disgusting. To gay people, it's seen as the biggest step forward in their struggle to be equal. After the collapse in World War I, Germany was in a terrible state. Communist revolutions rose and fell. National
He talks a bit fast here, so just real quick.
changes. Again, I will not comment if these changes in action, the cultural change during the Weimar Republic is needed, as a large part of the rise of the Nazis was a reaction, or you could even say revolution, against these cultural changes. Again, I will not comment if these changes are inherently good or bad. If you're Christian or vaguely conservative, this period is seen as disgusting. To gay people,
Yes, if you're Christian or vaguely conservative, the idea of gay people being able to walk around in a city without fear of being beaten to death is disgusting. Apparently, right? That's like I feel like that's pretty telling about where your political ideology is when you are trying to make it seem like the middle of the road conservative position is that hating gays is the norm, which it's not, by the way.
it's seen as the biggest step forward in their struggle to be equal. After the collapse in World War I, Germany was in a terrible state. Communist revolutions rose and fell, nationalist militias rose to meet them. Stuck with heavy loan repayments to the Allies, the German currency was not in a good shape, and things would only get worse in that regard later on. Life had begun anew, the old regime was gone, millions had died or been disabled fighting for a Germany that no longer existed. There was no triumphant return for them. A sad, depressed, and nihilistic world arose from the rubble. Berlin was the epicenter of this new world. The old values were gone, and the new were in. The crippling poverty had turned many to work in the streets. There were as many as 100,000 prostitutes or sex clubs at any one time, just in that one city. It wasn't confined to a red light district like modern-day Amsterdam, for example.
Just out of curiosity. Oops. There we go. Yeah, Berlin had a population of almost 4 million people in Berlin at the time. So like 100,000 sex workers probably seems like a very high estimate. Not outside of the range of possibility for a struggling economic time, but
For example, this was the city. The most unusual culture arose in what some would call a modern-day Babylon. There was a street in Berlin purely
a most unusual culture arose in a city that some would call a modern Sodom or Gomorrah. Like, again, Babylon, famous for being smote by God. You know, like, I feel like the bias is coming through a bit.
filled with pregnant prostitutes. Another with disfigured ones, acid scars, hunchbacks, you name it. Another was purely mother-daughter teams who would dress exactly alike. A lot of what went on in the city, many in the modern world would agree with. This aspect, most would find abhorrent. On a more acceptable
Like, here's the thing, though. Like, that happens everywhere. That happens everywhere. Prostitution is the world's oldest profession. Like, yeah, you can describe anything in, like, the way he's describing this here is designed to inspire, like, that's icky, that's gross. You know? How far in are we? We're like 2 minutes into this. It's an 11-minute long video. This guy thinks he's pulling a fast one, for sure. And, what do the video comments look like? We'll look at that after. But, basically he's trying to be like, look at how sick and degenerate Berlin was at the time. And that was indicative of the entirety of the Weimar Republic. And thus, it was a justifiable revolution by the Nazis against this degeneracy. Like, this is literally just Nazi propaganda. This is Nazi propaganda. Like, he's already, like, painting the picture for you.
level to our modern society, homosexuality was rife, and one famous Brit who emigrated called Berlin a bugger's paradise. Thousands turned up from all over
No, yeah, there was a lot of homosexuality, and I'm just gonna quote this one guy who said it was a bugger's paradise. I'm gonna use the old timey, you know, derogatory slang for gay people fucking. Who is this random Brit, you might ask? You know, good question. Let's look that up. Let's see. Like, it is weird that as a historian, there's not a citation on these, right? When I look up this phrase, this was the #1 result. Okay? The #1 result is this article from 2 years ago. This is Devil's Lane, Hollywood, California. Magnus Hirschfeld, The Fraudulent Reinvention of a Depraved German Butcher by Alex Koppen. And, in the first paragraph here, the staggering effort to rehabilitate one of the most grotesque figures of the last century is a compassionate messianic visionary of LGBTIA 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ABC+. Yeah, we can kind of see where the citation is coming from here, I think. Yeah, it's hidden somewhere in this article, but I think we can kind of get the impression of what ideological bias the author's working with here.
Over Europe to the one city they felt their life would be accepted and even promoted. Drugs were widely available, mainly morphine, opium, and cocaine. Transgenderism saw the light of day. Magnus Hirschfeld, a homosexual scientist, founded his Institute of Sexual Research. Here, all moral laws of the past were out the window, and people were free to experiment with gender, bizarre sexual fetishes, or browse his collection of sex items yet on display.
Yeah, like, my God, he's not even trying to hide it. Bizarre sexual fetishes. All of the moral ideas were thrown out the window. Like, the clear implication and framing of this is from the Nazi perspective. This guy is trying to be subtle, and he's failing spectacularly.
At the Institute. He was known as the Einstein of sex, and the first occurrence of someone undergoing a full male-to-female gender reassignment surgery was done here. Berlin was essentially liberalism run wild. An important aspect to note is that
liberalism run wild, Berlin, during the Weimar days. Yes, it was liberalism run wild, which is why the Nazis had to come in and bring all those wild liberals to heel. That's his argument. The framing is making the argument for him, you know? He's trying to sidestep making the argument himself, so he has plausible deniability, but the framing here is making his argument. And I'm not entirely sure if he realizes that. I think he thinks that he's protected from, like, someone watching this and being like, you're a Nazi, bro, but, like, it's the most obvious thing in the universe.
Many, or even most of the leading figures of this new liberal culture and the liberal government at large at this time were Jewish. I say this without opinion or further comment. Many Jews talk openly.
It just comes so fast and thick here. Like, my God, we're already JQing. We're 3.5 minutes into the video and he's already JQing.
Large at this time were Jewish. I say this without opinion or further comment. Many Jews talk openly and proudly of this period, and if you're a liberal and some aspects of this time is part of your worldview that you strive for, this is your prerogative. Whether this type of society is right or wrong depends on your worldview. The National Socialists, however, found it abhorrent. As a result, many of the books on the banned list were indeed by Jewish authors. This is just a brief overview of the culture at the time. I'll eventually write a video of its own regarding the Weimar period and its part in the rise of the Nazi Party. Hopefully it gives you somewhat of an idea of the time that they were living in, as it actually isn't covered very much. Only in the past few years has
notice here he's like showing this photograph of like a German cabaret club as if like, oh no, a lady in her underpants is like the most horrifying thing you can possibly imagine, you know?
attention come its way.
He's already like, yes, and as we know, during the Weimar period of the German Republic, it was run by the Jews, which is why it was so evil. Like, he's like comically Nazi posting, and I cannot stress this enough. I think he thinks he's being subtle about it.
Way on the internet.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten to the book burnings, which is the central part of this video. We're just now reaching it.
The burnings started spontaneously by the German Student Union. They called for a cleansing by fire of books that went against the German spirit. Spontaneously by the German Student Union.
Just out of curiosity here. Oh, you know, when you call it the German Student Union, it sounds very different than it was dominated from 1931 onward by the National Socialist German Students' League. It sounds very different when you accurately make a timeline of how it was founded during the Weimar Republic period as a democratic representation of interests. And then in the 1920s, it began swinging far right, and then in 1931 was fully taken over by the National Socialists, the Nazis. So it started book burning. Oh, what's that? In 1933, 2 years after they were taken over by the Nazis? Oh, it was just spontaneously done by non-affiliated students. These students were just upset with all the gays, and they had nothing to do with the Nazis running the country. Whoopsie!
They called for a cleansing by fire of books that went against the German spirit, which they felt were leading people astray. The Union published the 12 Theses, a reference to Martin Luther's...
Also, you're literally... The photos you're using here literally show Nazi officials, like people in Nazi uniforms with the swastika armbands. Like, come on, dude. You're so bad at this.
Spontaneously by the German Student Union. They called for a cleansing by fire of books that went against the German spirit, which they felt were leading people astray. The Union published the 12 Theses, a reference to Martin Luther's 95 Theses and written in a similar style. It went as follows. I've replaced all the uses of the word Volk with people instead of folk, which sounds stupid in English. 1. Language and literature have their roots in the people. It is the German people's responsibility to assure that its language and
again, the framing here is that, oh, this student group just, they took after Martin Luther and they created this on their own. This is a grassroots uprising. This is literally Nazi propaganda dictated to them to put out by the Nazi Party.
Literature are the pure and unadulterated expressions of its people's tradition. 2. At present there is a chasm between literature and German tradition. This situation is a disgrace. 3. Purity of language and literature is your responsibility. Your people have entrusted you with the duty of faithfully preserving your language. 4. Our most dangerous enemy is the Jew and those who are his slaves. 5.
Notice how, the reading of this document is gonna take up, a good 10% of this video.
A Jew can only think Jewish. If he writes in German, he is lying. The German who writes in German but thinks un-German is a traitor. The student who speaks and writes un-German is, in addition, faultless and has abandoned his duties. 6. We want to eradicate...
Are German Jews not part of the people? To Nazis, no. Nazis don't believe that Jews are part of the people. Like, they believe that, like, Jews are a secret third thing, you know? Like, they're secretly... They're sleeper agents for, you know, the global cabal of Jews, essentially.
Eradicate lies. We want to denounce treason. We want institutions of discipline and political education.
To be thinking, Julie. My God.
For us, the students, not mindlessness. 7. We want to regard the Jew as alien, and we want to respect the traditions of the people. Therefore, we demand of the...
I'm presenting this without any bias whatsoever, which is why I'm going to read out an entire piece of Nazi propaganda in the middle of my video with no additional context and in fact any other points around it are going to be misleading as to how it came about.
The censor. Jewish writings are to be published in Hebrew. If they appear in German, they must be identified as translations. Strongest actions against the abuse of the German script. German script is only available to Germans. The un-German spirit is to be eradicated from public libraries. 8. We demand of the German students the desire and capacity for independent knowledge and decisions. 9. We demand of German students the desire and capability to maintain the purity of the German language. 10. We demand of German students the desire and capability to overcome Jewish intellectualism and the resulting liberal decay in the German spirit. 11. We demand the selection of students and professors in accordance with their reliability and commitment to the German spirit. 12. We demand that German universities be a stronghold of the German people's tradition and a battleground reflecting the power of the German mind. Nearly a month later, the book burning...
So that was approximately like 2 minutes of the video. Sorry, when I said earlier it would be like 10% of the video, I meant it'd be like 20% of the video. 20% of the video is just straight up reading Nazi propaganda and miscontextualizing it to bamboozle anyone who might stumble across this video and try to indoctrinate them into, again, the Nazi way.
Began at the epicenter of Weimar culture, Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute of Sex Research. 20,000 books were burned. These types of spontaneous book burning...
You know, it's interesting because at the beginning of the video he said that the Nazis only banned 4,000 books, and yet here he is talking about how they burned 20,000 of them. And I wonder if he's gonna mention the fact that, like, many of these books were irreplaceable pieces of research that set back, like, scientific understanding about queer and trans people by, like, 50, 60 years, century, maybe.
Burnings continued until it became a whole movement of its own. The motives, in their eyes, are summed up well by Goebbels in 2 passages from his speech relating to the burn.
Ah, yes, time to quote Goebbels. A very reliable source, totally unbiased, by the way.
Yes to decency and morality in family and state. Here, the intellectual foundation of the November Republic is sinking to the ground, but from this wreckage, the phoenix of a new spirit will triumphantly rise. As the ever-growing Nazi movement saw it, the years following the disaster of the World War had been a mistake. Germany had gone down the wrong path. They felt their culture had been hijacked by Jews, liberals, and defeatists.
Just,
As the ever-growing Nazi movement saw it, the years following the disaster...
Again, the idea here being that, like, oh, the Nazi movement had, like, the broad support of the German population. People loved being Nazi. Like, that's like his pitch, right? But it's not even accurate. It's not even accurate. Like, at the time, like, in 1933, when the book burning took place, like, 1/3 of Germans were, like, part of the Nazi party. It's not the majority of Germans even at that point. And from that point on, there were very clear, systematic reasons to join and align yourself with the Nazi party specifically because they might kill you if you didn't.
Disaster of the World War had been a mistake. Germany had gone down the wrong path. They felt their culture had been
Yeah, again, it is a fascist authoritarian movement. It is not representative of the people. It's not representative of the people if it's at the end of a gun.
hijacked by Jews, liberals, and defeatists. They felt family values had given way to rampant individualism, moral values given way to sexual deviancy, homosexuality, and worse. The comparisons to our current time are obvious and
again, here, he pretends not to have a bias.
They felt family values had given way to rampant individualism, moral values given way to sexual deviancy, homosexuality, and worse.
They felt that family values had given way to sexual deviancy, homosexuality, and worse. Again, this is not how you phrase something if you are unbiased. He thinks he's sounding objective right now, but I don't know. I feel like we're fairly literate here, and we can like understand what he's saying along with the subtext and, you know, what he's leaving deliberately unsaid. He's very neutral, guys.
The comparisons to our current time are obvious and barely deserve mentioning. Then
he'll throw a line like that where he's like, yeah, the comparisons to our modern time is very obvious when, you know, there's a party that's calling out all these things as bad and evil and wrong and anti-family values. And, you know, the comparison is very apt. Like, stop playing around. Just come out as a Nazi, bro. Like, the idea that you think you're being clever, Zoomer historian, by, like, trying to say that you have no bias multiple times throughout your video. Like, you know that people can tell, bro. You know that people can tell. Just own it, dog. Own it. Walk down the street like Richard Spencer, okay? Own it, dog. Take the punches to the face that you rightly deserve.
and, as now, it was a battle between the sacred principles of our society in the past and the new, liberal, and unknown. Now I will simply, again, hello YouTube, without opinion, go over
Yep, no opinion from this guy.
the genres and some specifics of the books they sent to the flames. Communism was the sworn enemy of National Socialism. They had fought and died against each other ever since the birth of the movement. There was never any doubt that communist works would be the first on the chopping block. To name some of the most obvious, Karl Marx's Das Kapital, the Holy Book of Communism, was sent to the flames, as was Lenin's and Trotsky's works. Communists closer to home, like Rosa Luxemburg's works, were banned also. Pacifism was seen as weakness. While National Socialism didn't see war as inherently good, the movement felt pacifism to be like a disease that weakens the wider whole. The book that spawned the...
You know, it is really fascinating to hear him talk about this and basically, like, go through, working through different, like all of the points of fascism. Like, the 14 points of fascism. It is fascinating to see him, like, go through and just be like, yeah, and then they hated this book because, you know, intellectualism is actually weakness. You know, you shouldn't be introspective at all. Like, he's like, basically, like, talking through all of it. Oh, you want to be a pacifist due to your, introspective book learning? To the flames with you!
Recent Netflix hit remake, All Quiet on the Western Front, was sent to the flames and later banned. While this might seem extreme, consider that a few years later, Oswald Mosley, Great Britain's biggest peace advocate, would be thrown in a tiny cold cell without trial.
Just out of curiosity. In case you don't know anything about this guy, Oswald Mosley, Britain's biggest peace advocate? I wonder. Oh, he was a member of parliament and later founded and led the British Union of Fascists. Oh. He wasn't a peace advocate. He was a collaborator. you see. Mosley was imprisoned in May 1940 after the outbreak of the Second World War, and the BUF was banned. He was released in 1943 and politically disgraced by his association with fascism, moved abroad in 1951, spending most of the remainder of his life in Paris and 2 residences in Ireland. Yeah, turns out it's not really popular to be a pro-Hitler guy in a country currently being firebombed by the Luftwaffe. All right, not the most popular thing to be when you're trying to sneak intelligence to the Nazis while under bombardment. Weird stuff. Who would have ever seen any of this coming? Oh wait, we have more info about his imprisonment. Unbeknown to Mosley, MI5 and the special branch had deeply penetrated the BUF and were also monitoring him through listening devices. Beginning in 1934, they were increasingly worried that Mosley's noted oratory skills would convince the public to provide financial support to the BUF, enabling it to challenge the political establishment. His agitation was officially tolerated until the events of the Battle of France in May 1940 made the government consider him too dangerous. Mosley, who at the time was focused on pleading for the British to accept Hitler's peace offer of March, was detained on the 23rd of May 1940, less than a fortnight after Winston Churchill became Prime Minister. Mosley was interrogated for 16 hours by Lord Burkitt and never formally charged with the crime, and instead interned under Defense Regulation 18B. Most other active fascists in Britain met the same fate, resulting in the BUF's practical removal at an organized level from the UK's political stage. Good. You know what? Good. When you have like collaborators advocating for your capitulation to a foreign power during an attempted invasion, I think that there might be some exceptions to locking people up, okay? Yeah, what do you mean trying to utterly subjugate an entire population to Hitler isn't working for peace? I know, crazy. Crazy, crazy stuff. Greatest peace advocate, leader of the fascists. As we all know, fascism, a political ideology that isn't at all predicated on war and conflict and is entirely dedicated to peace.
For opposing the Second World War and only released when he was seriously ill. Books on early transgender theory being sent to the flames should hardly be surprising given where the first burning began. Hirschfeld's library was gutted and sent straight into the flames outside. Transgenderism was viewed in all countries, not just in National Socialist Germany at the time, as something absurd and deranged. Hirschfeld was...
Except that, at the time, it wasn't viewed as absurd and deranged in Germany. Germany was the place doing the cutting-edge research on transgender people. It was the exception. Also, again, if this guy knew anything about history, he would know that that isn't true. All countries around the world did not view trans people as horrific abominations that were absurd. We know from anthropological evidence and from the histories that trans people have existed, for example, in India, one of the most populated nations on the planet, for the last, couple thousand years, at least. So, just that right there completely invalidates his point. We don't even have to get into, all of the other countries and, civilizations around the world that have supported trans people. We can just start with literally the biggest one. Bring forth the chart? Okay, it has been requested. Time to bring forth the chart. So in 2015, PBS made this chart of gender-diverse societies and cultures and across time. So, wow. turns out you have a bunch of different people from all kinds of places on the planet where there are multiple genders. Here's Mashoga in Kenya and Tanzania. Mashoga is a Swahili term that connotes a range of identities on the gender continuum. While loosely used to indicate gay men, a large proportion of the Mashoga are persons assigned male at birth who begin to live as women early in life. They characteristically wear both men and women's clothing, particularly at religious or social events, but in a manner distinct to Mashoga. Mashoga often socialize as women and traditionally serve a crucial role in wedding ceremonies, educating the bride on sexual matters. So, again, turns out he's full of shit, because they were doing this prior to World War II, certainly. Bring this up next, please. Well, this is a bit after the fact, but yeah. Oh, wow, everybody. December 1st, 1952, XGI becomes Blonde Beauty. It's front page news when George Jorgensen Jr. is reborn as Christine Jorgensen, gaining international celebrity and notoriety as the first widely known person to undergo a successful sex change operation. Jorgensen, who grew up in the Bronx, in her words, a frail, tow-headed, introverted little boy who ran from fistfights and rough-and-tumble games, was drafted. Was drafted into the Army just after World War II. Military service only reinforced Jorgensen's belief that she was in fact a woman trapped inside a man's body. After receiving her discharge, Jorgensen returned home, and first heard about sex reassignment surgery, which was being performed only in Sweden. It was illegal almost everywhere else, including the United States. Encouraged, Jorgensen began taking female hormones on her own, then headed for Sweden. Oh, wow. Wait, Christine Jorgensen, doing DIY HRT in the 1950s? My God. She never made it. Stopping in Denmark to visit relatives in Copenhagen, Jorgensen was introduced to Christian Hamburger. Jesus Christ. Wait, really? A Danish surgeon who specialized in the kind of surgery she was seeking. He agreed to take the case and put his patient on hormone replacement therapy as they prepared for surgery. Several surgeries were required, the first one consisting of castration, which was only carried out after the permission was obtained from the Danish Minister of Justice. At the time of Jorgensen's transformation, Hamburger did not give her an artificial vagina, so she remained anatomically incorrect for several years before undergoing a vaginoplasty in the United States. The hormone therapy resulted in profound changes to Jorgensen's body. Fat was redistributed, and she began to take on the contours of a woman. Subsequent surgeries completed the process until she was ready to step into the spotlight. Jorgensen's sex change, which may have been leaked to the press by Jorgensen herself, hit the headlines December 1st, creating an international sensation. XGI becomes Blonde Beauty, screamed the banner of Jorgensen's hometown in New York Daily News. In fact, Jorgensen was not the first person to undergo sex reassignment surgery. During the rollicking Weimar period, German doctors performed the surgery on at least 2 patients. The difference in Jorgensen's case was that she underwent hormone replacement therapy in conjunction with the surgery. The earlier surgeries were strictly cut and paste. Although Jorgensen complained frequently about the jackals of the press, she did become something of a publicity hound and took most of the tasteless remarks with good grace, laughing off jokes such as, Christine Jorgensen went abroad and came back abroad. She turned to acting and became a nightclub singer as well, performing, predictably, I Enjoy Being a Girl. But Christine Jorgensen's world was not an enlightened one, particularly when it came to transgenderism. She paid the cost for this lack of sophistication. A first announced engagement fell through and a second one failed as well, when the state of New York refused to issue the couple a marriage license. Her intended husband also lost his job when the marriage plans became known. She later traveled the lecture circuit, talking about her experiences and advocating for the nascent transgender cause. Jorgensen died of cancer in 1989, a few weeks short of age 63. And now I've read this entire thing in an old 1950s voice, but clearly this article was written long after 1952. So, I just kind of look like a jackass. Moving on.
Was the perfect example for the Germans of what they didn't want in society. A Jewish homosexual scientist who turns men into women. He was on a speaking tour at the time of the burnings. He never returned. Some of his works include The Objective Diagnosis of Homosexuality, Transvestites, The Erotic Drive to Crossdress, and The Sexual History of the World War. Equally alongside with transgenderism, the burning of homosexual works could be best summed up in the character of Hirschfeld and his works. The liberalization of
Again, I need to really kind of like stress here. He thinks that burning like books about gay people is good because we shouldn't understand gay people. We should simply destroy them.
society and the availability for those fighting their homosexual desires, no matter how strong, to act on them was everywhere. Even in the early Nazi party, the top rungs of the SA had a serious problem with bedding young boys. Part of the justification for the Night of the Long Knives was this. When the SS stormed in to arrest the top SA members, many were found in bed with young boys. They wanted this
Yeah, so basically this guy is so deep inside the Nazi like closet that he's like, actually the Night of the Long Knives was justified, not because it was taking out political rivals, but because all of the political rivals were actually pedophiles. That's right. That's right. All of the all of Hitler's political rivals and associates that he didn't like that were murdered on the Night of the Long Knives were actually all pedophiles. Crazy coincidence.
utterly stamped out of the party and society as a whole, and the acceptance of it left to the Weimar past. The laws that were currently in place against homosexuality from the previous regimes but not enforced were now actually enforced under the Nazis. Pornography or any kind of work seen as being degenerate in this regard was sent to the flames and banned. Much as today, there was a huge opposition to porn, and why
Much as today, there was a huge opposition to porn. My dude. Literally 30% of all data transferred on the internet is pornography. Which honestly seems low. My god. But porn sites get more traffic than Netflix, Amazon, and like most other things combined. Like the idea that people people are just so against pornography. Uh-huh. Sure, bud. Sure. And I'm yeah, uh-huh. Noctalb, honestly, a video dunking on this guy was recommended to me, and I was like, how bad could this possibly be? I didn't even watch that video. I just went directly to his channel, and oh boy.
Why the Nazis would oppose such a thing needs no explanation. I haven't left the Jewish books for last because I feel they're the least important. It's more because it's a culmination of the rest. The Jews, for many long and complex historical reasons, find themselves massively overrepresented in art, literature, politics, and liberal culture in general. They've been
There we are, back to the JQing. The time-honored tradition of his kind. And by that I mean Nazi kind.
a major part of the history of liberalism, and at the spearhead of every movement that's challenged the European status quo. I say this without opinion. Maybe this is
Ah yes, the Jews. The leaders among every challenge to the European status quo. I say this without opinion. Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't think that's true, actually. I don't think that's true, actually. Like, you can say certain facts, right? But, like, he isn't citing any information. He's just saying things. And I think that people need to understand the difference between saying something and, like, citing actual data. You know? Like, for example, ah, here we go. In the early 20th century, and this is from the German Jewish Economic Elite, 1900 to 1933, abstract. In the early 20th century, a dense corporate network was created among the large German corporations, Germany Incorporated. About 16% of the members of this corporation network were of Jewish background. At the center of the network, about 25% were Jewish. So basically, like, yeah, there was an overrepresentation relative to, like, the, did I not show it on screen? Just real quick. Right? And, essentially, we'll accept the cookies so you can see it better. This is from 2015, University of Trier. And the Jewish population of Germany was about 1% of the population. So overrepresentation absolutely did exist for historical reasons. But, and this is critical, there wasn't a Jewish conspiracy to overthrow Germany and, make it degenerate. That was not a thing. Like, if he's truly being an unbiased historian here, he would need to clarify that that type of conspiratorial plot never existed. The entire Nazi mythology was fabricated. Notice how throughout this video he's constantly saying the Nazis believed, the Nazis believed, the Nazis believed. But weirdly enough, for a historian, the worst historian on YouTube, he doesn't actually cite the material reality of the time. Because, like, for example, Jewish people were historically overrepresented in banking. But that's largely a result of historical prejudices and the result of Christianity and Christians at large considering the process of usury a sin. Charging interest was considered sinful for like 2,000 years. And so Jewish people got kind of pushed into the role of running banks because it's not a sin for, like, to Jewish people to charge interest. Like, this is a direct result of Christian persecution of Jewish people. And, like, the fact that that is the reality, and he doesn't even talk about that. He makes a vague gesture to various, historical reasons, and we're not coming to any conclusion about that. But you're a historian. You should be able to come to a conclusion about that, actually. So, like, even like recognizing the reality that Jewish people were overrepresented in, like, some corporate businesses doesn't justify the Nazi revolution against them, like that's like one of the core points. Hey, Ms. Milena, how you doing?
Something to be proud of. Maybe it isn't.
I say this without any opinion. Maybe this is something to be proud of. Maybe it isn't.
But it is the case for whatever reason. Your interpretation of this phenomena depends on your worldview. All that is to say that at the
also he goes on to claim, like, Jewish people were more representative in, like, arts and literature in Germany at the time. I don't know if that's true. I've only heard and, like, read up on, like, the like Jewish banking, throughout the centuries, and also like Jewish involvement in businesses in Germany during this time period. I haven't really seen or encountered anything about Jewish people being overrepresented in the arts of the time. Who is this? This is the worst historian on YouTube, who is a non-biased historian who is very clearly a Nazi. Zoomer historian.
The highest levels of all the former categories, you find many, many Jewish authors, and mixed in with the other gripes the National Socialists had with Jewish practices, such as their banking, it's not hard to imagine why the Jewish books were an easy target for them. They felt the Jews had a hand in all their problems, be it cultural, political, or financial.
Notice again the language here. They felt. They thought. But, like, what was the reality? You profess to be the Zoomer historian. Why can't you, like, make a judgment on this about whether or not these accusations were founded? Because I'm gonna say this here, because you can't, because they're not.
Again, I state all of this without opinion of my own.
No opinion, no opinion, no opinion. The Jews run the world. No opinion.
To say book burning and banning is inherently wrong would be both silly and hypocritical of any Westerner.
Well, okay, I also think that there's a big difference between book banning and book burning. Because again, in the 1930s, there was a pretty good chance that if you went and burned all of the copies of a book in, like, a given area, there wouldn't be a way to reproduce and redistribute that book. A book was like a physical good. There wasn't like an internet at the time. Like, it is different when you are physically destroying the books in an environment where replicating or getting that information is almost impossible without the book. You know, like, there is something different about that. You are deliberately trying to manipulate the population by denying them information. And I think that, for example, it's good to eliminate books that would incline people towards Nazism. I think that is good. I think it is bad to burn books about gay people. Hot take, I know.
The majority of our nations have books on the banned list. If there isn't a banned list, buying certain books will get you on a watch list. We censor our media, we censor what types...
Citation needed? Which books are going to get you on a banned list? Or on a watch list?
of books are able to get published. Inversely to the topic of this video, can you imagine if a pro-Nazi history book tried getting published? They'd be thwarted at every step. David Irving's life was destroyed for his interpretation of events in World War II, and finding his books is not impossible, but very expensive.
Huh. Is that true? Is it actually really difficult and expensive to find David Irving's books? Oh wait, no it's not. I just googled David Irving and clicked on shopping, and wow, look, a $23 book, a $10 book, a $21 book. Wow, wowee. Some of these might be expensive, but not most of them.
Many works may be allowed at the government level, but good luck getting through the Amazon book bans and finding...
Okay, but there's a difference between a book ban and Amazon not wanting to publish your book. Like, that's a completely different thing. One is a business decision, and the other is government censorship. No one was censoring David Irving. They just didn't want to, like, produce and distribute David Irving's books because it would impact their other businesses. Like, this isn't difficult to understand. If you're arguing that this creates a de facto, like, banning of the book, I would argue that you're kind of full of shit on that point, because I literally in 2 seconds was able to bring up a bunch of books by David Irving that you can buy right now.
A publishing house. Anyway, this is but a short video detailing what types of books were actually banned. The event is widely mentioned but not discussed. I think it's important people know what books were actually banned before rushing to claim that it was some unspeakable evil. Whatever.
I noticed how at the beginning he said, like, people said they were just like Jewish books and like communist books and gay books. but that's not good enough. And then he spent most of the video reading out like Nazi propaganda, and then he spent like 1 minute talking about the different kinds of books that were banned, and like basically was just like, yeah, communist books like Das Kapital were banned. Gay books from Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute of Sexology were banned. And of course, the Jew books were banned. And like, you just took more time to say the same thing you said at the beginning of your video, without any citations, mind you, in order as like a vehicle to provide Nazi propaganda to your audience. Like, that's the primary concern about like this channel. The primary goal here is to distribute Nazi propaganda, not to educate you about history.
Whatever side of the fence they may sit on politically, there has been very, very few censorship-free civilizations in history, and National Socialism was no different. Historical context is important. Who knows?
See, the Nazis were, Nazis weren't worse than any other civilization in history on book burning. So they're not that bad, okay? Thanks, bye. Remember to subscribe to my Patreon.
If the internet and its censorship didn't exist now, would right-wing books not be getting burnt at this very moment?
My God. Would right-wing books not be burned at this very moment? We have right-wing books right now. Like, white nationalists still, like, publish their books. Like, what are you talking about? You can self-publish basically anything. Like, what are you talking about, dude? I like
different.
I like how he throws this in at the very end, by the way.
Historical context is important. Who knows? If the internet and its censorship didn't exist now, would right-wing books not be getting burnt at this very moment?
Yeah, if the internet and its censorship didn't exist now, would right-wing books not be getting burnt? Essentially arguing that, like, him not being able to openly Nazi post on is equivalent to burning all of the research on gay and homosexuals, or homosexuals and transgender people that existed in the entirety of, like, the most advanced country on that particular topic. Oh my goodness. That was incredibly terrible. So what did we learn from this? Effectively, we learned that this up-and-coming Zoomer historian channel with almost 100,000 subscribers is just mainlining Nazi propaganda into its viewers.